The morning sun had barely risen when Rowan Hale jolted awake to frantic knocking that echoed through his tiny apartment, shaking him from a restless sleep filled with memories he was trying to forget. His heart thudded hard, that kind of heavy, sinking beat that comes before bad news. He wasn't expecting anyone. He never had visitors. Life, as a single dad, didn't leave room for surprises. But when he opened the door, still half-dressed and exhausted, he froze so sharply it felt like the world around him paused. Standing on his doorstep, in crisp daylight that made everything too real, was his boss, Maren Solberg, holding something against her chest and staring at him like she wasn't sure how to begin. And then she whispered the last thing he expected to hear. "You forgot something last night at my office. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that prove life can change in a moment, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Everyday Tales so you never miss a story that touches the heart." Rowan's throat tightened as he stepped aside, letting her in even though the apartment was cluttered with toys, laundry, and evidence of a life constantly stretched thin. The soft sunlight filtered through the curtains, revealing how worn out he looked, how his eyes carried shadows that didn't fade even in daylight. Maren walked in slowly, carefully, holding a neatly folded child's jacket, his daughter Mira's, left behind after he had rushed out of the office the night before, when an unexpected client emergency kept him late. Rowan had worked until his eyes stung, terrified of losing the job he had fought so hard to keep, and when he realized he was late to pick up his daughter from daycare, panic had drowned everything else. He had run out with Mira asleep in his arms, leaving behind more than he knew. Maren placed the jacket on the couch, but her expression was softer than Rowan had ever seen at work. She wasn't just here for the forgotten jacket. He felt that instantly. She stood there observing the cramped space, the half-washed dishes, the cold coffee in a chipped mug, and the small art projects pinned to the refrigerator with magnets that barely held. Something in her eyes shifted, like she was seeing his life for the first time without the walls he always tried to keep up at work. Rowan braced himself, expecting criticism, expecting the worst, because experience had taught him that life rarely knocked gently. But Maren surprised him. Instead of scolding him for being distracted or late, she asked if he had slept at all. Her tone was gentle, cautiously warm, and Rowan felt the weight of months pressing down on him. He hadn't slept properly since Mira's mother passed away 2 years earlier, lost in a sudden accident that shattered everything. Every day since then had been survival. Work, rushing, daycare, apologizing, doing his best only to feel like he was always behind. He felt exposed under Maren's gaze, like she could read the exhaustion stitched into his bones. She handed him an envelope next, something he didn't recognize. His hands trembled slightly as he took it. Maren explained that the HR system had flagged him working too many unpaid overtime hours, and she had personally reviewed his logs. Inside the envelope was a check, a large one, compensation for months of unpaid work he hadn't dared ask for. Rowan blinked hard, swallowing the emotion rising in his throat. He wasn't used to kindness. He wasn't used to anyone fighting for him. But the most shocking moment came when Mira woke up from her room, sleepy-eyed and curious. Maren turned toward her with a tenderness Rowan didn't expect. She knelt down, speaking to the little girl as if she weren't an inconvenience or an interruption, but a small, important human being. Mira, shy but trusting, reached out and touched the sleeve of Maren's coat as if drawn to her calm. And something changed in Rowan right then. He saw Maren differently, not as a boss, but as someone who carried her own quiet heartbreak. He had heard rumors that she once lost a nephew she was close to, a tragedy that made her withdraw from people. Maybe she understood more than he thought. As the day brightened, Maren confessed that after Rowan left the office last night, she found not just the jacket but a drawing Mira had made, a picture of her dad holding her hand, but on the other side was an empty space with a small heart drawn above it. On the back, in shaky handwriting, Mira had written, "We miss you, Mama." Marin said she couldn't get that picture out of her mind. She realized Rowan wasn't just an employee. He was a father stretched to his limits, trying to hold a world together with hands that had been tired for too long. She apologized for the pressure work had put on him, something no boss had ever done for him before. Rowan felt emotion clawing up his chest. Nobody had stepped into his world like this in years. He didn't know why Marin cared, but for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel invisible. Marin gently asked if she could help. Not as a boss, but as someone who understood loss, someone who didn't want to see another family fall apart from exhaustion. She offered flexible hours, remote days, and promised to adjust his workload. She even suggested bringing children to the office on certain days after seeing how well Mira adapted to new environments. As they talked, the room filled with a strange warmth. Rowan realized how long it had been since someone stood beside him without judging. Marin learned how much he'd been carrying, and Rowan saw the quiet empathy she hid behind her strict professionalism. There was no romance, no tension shaped by cliches, just two people standing in the sunlight of a small apartment, recognizing the fractures in each other and offering something like understanding. Hours passed as if the world outside didn't exist. Mira sat on the floor drawing while Marin and Rowan spoke honestly, maybe for the first time. By the time Marin stood to leave, the heaviness in Rowan's chest had shifted into something softer, lighter. She smiled gently and told him he hadn't forgotten something at her office. She had brought it herself because she sensed he needed more than a jacket returned. He needed someone to remind him he wasn't alone. As she walked toward the door, Rowan felt a lump rising in his throat. Mira rushed over and wrapped her tiny arms around Marin's legs in a spontaneous hug. Marin let out a quiet breath that trembled, gently placing a hand on the child's back. And in that brief, bright moment, something unspoken passed between all three of them. A recognition of broken pieces, and maybe the beginning of something healing. If this story moved your heart even a little, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Everyday Tales. Your support helps bring more emotional stories to life. Before the ending, please comment "Hope lives here."